The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon as Ana drove along the winding road from Medellin to Santa Marta. The vibrant greens of the Colombian countryside blurred past her window, a picturesque backdrop to her long-awaited vacation. She had been looking forward to this trip for months, an escape from the hustle and bustle of city life, a chance to breathe in the salty air of the Caribbean coast. But as the last rays of sunlight faded into twilight, her car sputtered ominously. The engine coughed, then fell silent, leaving her stranded on a deserted stretch of road. Panic surged in her chest as she turned the key in the ignition, but the only response was a disheartening click. "Great," she muttered to herself, glancing around at the empty landscape. The road was flanked by dense woods, their shadows creeping closer as night approached. She fumbled for her cell phone, only to find that the battery was dead. A wave of dread washed over her. With no signal and no way to call for help, she was utterly alone. Taking a deep breath, Ana decided to venture out on foot. She had to find help. The thought of waiting in the car, vulnerable and isolated, sent shivers down her spine. As she stepped onto the gravel shoulder, the cool evening air wrapped around her like a shroud. With each step, an unsettling feeling began to creep into her mind. It was as if the darkness itself was alive, watching her every move. She quickened her pace, glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone, or something, lurking in the shadows. The trees loomed tall and foreboding, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers against the deepening night sky. "Just keep walking," she whispered to herself, trying to shake off the sense of unease. But the feeling persisted, gnawing at her instincts. She pressed on, the crunch of gravel beneath her feet echoing in the silence, unaware that the true terror was just beginning to unfold. Ana walked briskly, her heart racing as the shadows of the trees seemed to stretch and twist around her. The eerie silence of the forest was punctuated only by the rustle of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. Each sound made her jump, her senses heightened by the encroaching darkness. She tried to focus on the road ahead, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger, an oppressive weight on her shoulders. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees, sending a jolt of fear through her. "Ana froze. Her biret hiçinkin her troat." The sound was primal, a warning that sent chills down her spine. She turned slowly, scanning the underbrush, but saw nothing, just the dark silhouettes of trees and the creeping shadows that danced in the fading light. Panic surged within her as she resumed walking, her pace quickening to a near run. The growl came again, closer this time, and she could feel the adrenaline pumping through her veins. It was then that she caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of her eye, a flash of fur, a dark shape darting between the trees. Her instincts kicked in, and she fumbled for her pepper spray, a small comfort in her trembling hand. "Stay away!" she shouted, her voice cracking in the stillness. The growl morphed into a snarl, and Ana felt a rush of terror as the creature emerged from the shadows. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its eyes glinted with a predatory hunger, and its body was low to the ground, muscles coiled like springs. Without thinking, she turned and ran. The creature was fast, its heavy paws pounding the earth behind her. She could hear its breath, hot and ragged, as it chased her through the underbrush. The world around her blurred as she sprinted, branches clawing at her skin, roots threatening to trip her. Desperation fueled her flight. She reached for the pepper spray, her fingers trembling as she turned to face her pursuer. With a swift motion, she aimed and sprayed the noxious mist toward the beast. It recoiled, howling in pain, but Ana didn't wait to see if it would retreat. She turned and plunged deeper into the forest, adrenaline propelling her forward. The trees closed in around her, the darkness thickening as she stumbled through the undergrowth. She could hear the creature recovering behind her, its growls now mixed with a sense of fury. Ana knew she had to escape, but the forest was a labyrinth, and every turn felt like a trap. In her frantic dash, She suddenly lost her footing and fell into a hidden pit, the ground giving way beneath her. The world spun as she tumbled down, landing hard at the bottom. Dazed and breathless, she lay there for a moment, the sounds of the forest fading into a haunting silence. Anna lay at the bottom of the pit, her heart racing and her body aching from the fall. The darkness enveloped her, and for a moment, she struggled to catch her breath, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Panic threatened to overwhelm her as she realized how deep the hole was. The walls were steep and slick, offering no easy way out. She sat up slowly, wincing as pain shot through her limbs. The sounds of the forest above faded into an eerie stillness, and for a moment, she felt utterly alone. The growls of the creature were now distant, but she knew it was still out there, lurking just beyond the edge of the pit. "Get a grip, Anna," she whispered to herself, forcing her mind to focus. She needed to find a way out. Gritting her teeth, she examined her surroundings. The pit was dark, but she could make out the rough texture of the earth and the roots of nearby trees that dangled overhead. She reached for one of the roots, gripping it tightly as she attempted to pull herself up. With each effort, her muscles screamed in protest, but she fought against the fatigue. After several attempts, she managed to climb a few feet, but the walls were too steep. Just as despair began to creep in, she heard a faint rustling from above. Her heart leaped. Was it the creature? "No, no, no," she muttered, her voice trembling. She couldn't afford to panic now. Taking a deep breath, she steadied herself and focused on the roots above. With renewed determination, she began to climb again, using every ounce of strength she had left. Minutes felt like hours as she struggled, her fingers slipping on the damp earth. Just when she thought she might give up, she felt her hand grasp a sturdy root. With a surge of adrenaline, she pulled herself up, inch by agonizing inch, until finally, she reached the edge of the pit. With one last effort, she hoisted herself over the rim and collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air. The cool night air felt refreshing against her skin, but there was no time to rest. She quickly scrambled to her feet, scanning the darkness for any sign of the creature. The forest was still, but the oppressive silence only heightened her sense of urgency. She needed to keep moving. With her heart pounding in her chest, Anna took a moment to gather her bearings and then set off into the woods, the fear of being hunted driving her forward. As she walked, the exhaustion from her ordeal began to weigh heavily on her. She had no idea how long she had been in the pit, but her stomach growled in protest, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since her journey began. The thought of food was a fleeting comfort, overshadowed by the looming threat of the creature that had chased her. Determined to survive, Anna pushed deeper into the forest, her senses alert for any sign of danger. She knew she had to find a way out of this nightmare, but the darkness seemed to close in around her, and the feeling of being watched returned with a vengeance. The forest was alive with sounds that both intrigued and terrified Anna. The rustling of leaves, the distant hoots of owls, and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot created a symphony of the wild that felt both comforting and menacing. As she walked, she tried to push aside the fear that gnawed at her, focusing instead on survival. After what felt like hours of wandering through the dense underbrush, Anna stumbled upon a small clearing. The moonlight filtered through the branches above, illuminating the area just enough for her to see. Her heart raced with a flicker of hope as she scanned her surroundings. And then she saw it, a banana tree, its bright yellow fruit glowing in the moonlight. A wave of relief washed over her as she rushed toward it, her stomach growling loudly in response to the sight of food. She reached up and plucked a couple of bananas, peeling one with trembling hands. The sweet, creamy fruit was a taste of heaven after her harrowing ordeal. She devoured it hungrily, savoring every bite as if it were a feast. Next to the banana tree, she noticed a small water spring bubbling up from the ground. Anna knelt beside it, cupping her hands to drink. The cool water was refreshing, revitalizing her weary body and lifting her spirits. For the first time since her car broke down, she felt a glimmer of hope. With her hunger sated and her thirst quenched, Anna took a moment to gather her thoughts. She knew she couldn't stay in one place for too long. The creature that had chased her was still out there, and she had to keep moving if she wanted to survive. After resting for a few minutes, she decided to follow the direction of the water spring, hoping it might lead her to a larger water source or even back to the road. As she walked, she felt a renewed sense of determination. She would not let fear dictate her fate. However, the forest was a maze, and as she ventured deeper, the shadows grew thicker, and the sounds of the night became more pronounced. Every rustle made her heart race, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was still being watched. Suddenly, a chilling howl pierced the night air, sending a jolt of terror through her. The creature was close. Anna's instincts kicked in, and she began to run again, her heart pounding as she darted through the trees. The underbrush snagged at her clothes, but she pushed forward, adrenaline propelling her onward. As she ran, she spotted a faint glow in the distance. Hope surged within her as she realized it might be a sign of civilization. With every ounce of strength left in her, she sprinted toward the light, praying it was a gas station or a house where she could find help. The howl echoed behind her, closer now, and she could hear the creature crashing through the underbrush, relentless in its pursuit. Just as she thought she might be caught, she burst through the trees and into a clearing. There it was, a gas station, its neon lights flickering in the darkness. With a final burst of energy, Anna sprinted toward it, her heart racing with a mix of fear and hope. She could see the silhouette of a figure inside, and she shouted for help, her voice hoarse and desperate. Anna burst through the door of the gas station, the bell above jingling as she stumbled inside. The fluorescent lights flickered harshly, illuminating the small space filled with snacks, drinks, and a few shelves of supplies. Behind the counter, a startled attendant looked up, his eyes widening in surprise as he took in the sight of the disheveled woman before him. "Help! Please!" she gasped, her voice trembling with exhaustion and fear. "There's something out there. I need help." The attendant, a middle-aged man with a scruffy beard, quickly assessed her frantic demeanor. Without hesitation, he reached for the phone behind the counter. "Stay here. I'll call the police," he said, his voice steady despite the alarm in Anna's eyes. As he dialed, Anna leaned against the counter, her legs shaking beneath her. She could still hear the distant howls echoing from the forest, a haunting reminder of the terror she had just escaped. The attendant spoke into the phone, his voice calm and reassuring, and Anna felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. "Ma'am, can you tell me what happened?" he asked once he hung up, his gaze steady as he looked at her. "I was driving from Medellin to Santa Marta when my car broke down," Anna explained, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I tried to walk for help, but something chased me. I don't know what it was, but it was huge and it wanted to get me." The attendant nodded, listening intently. "You're safe now. The police are on their way. Just take a deep breath." Anna did as he suggested, inhaling deeply and releasing the tension that had built up in her chest. She glanced out the window, half expecting to see the creature lurking in the shadows, but the night was still, the only sound the soft hum of the refrigerator behind her. Moments later, the sound of sirens pierced the silence, growing louder as they approached. Relief washed over her, and tears of gratitude filled her eyes. She had made it. She was safe. When the police arrived, they quickly assessed the situation. Anna recounted her harrowing experience, and they assured her they would investigate the area. As they prepared to head back into the forest, one of the officers turned to her. "You did well to find your way here. It's not safe out there at night. We'll make sure you get home." With the police by her side, Anna felt a sense of calm wash over her. The terror of the past hours began to fade, replaced by a profound gratitude for her survival. As she stepped outside, the cool night air felt refreshing against her skin, a reminder that she was still alive. As the officers headed into the woods, Anna took a moment to collect herself. She had faced unimaginable fear and had come out the other side, stronger than she ever thought possible. The road to Santa Marta still lay ahead, but now she knew she could face whatever challenges awaited her. With a deep breath, she turned to the attendant, who offered her a reassuring smile. "You're going to be okay," he said, and for the first time that night, Anna believed him.